Thank you for taking the time to meet with me for your pre-conference. I'm really looking forward to observing the lesson in your classroom. This conference should take about 15 to 20 minutes. The purpose of this conference is for you to have the opportunity to walk through your lesson, connect to any student data and the student work, and to provide a general idea of what to expect during your lesson. And also for me to provide you any support that you may need. Are we ready to start?
Yes.
Yes. Which assessment data was examined to inform the planning for this lesson?
So basically, we give the students a benchmark where we could determine where the areas of need they need to be established, and based on that data, on a certain tics, we could focus on their learning gaps, and that way we could try to provide a reinforcement and reteaching for those students to improve and be ready for the STAR test.
Perfect. Let's walk through the lesson now. Tell me about the lesson I will be observing, the objective, and all of that.
Okay, so the lesson that you're going to be observing, basically we're transitioning a little bit into geometry. Right now it's an introduction since it's a sixth grade math, and we're going to be going over about triangle sum theorems. Basically what it is that uh, all the angles inside the triangle has to be equal to 180 degrees. Now within the lesson, the students are expected to learn why it's 180 degrees. So I had to show them, I had to apply a sample of where the 180 degrees came from. So we started with a circle, we divided it in half, and then we have a line that creates 180 degrees. And from there we examine a triangle, cut into little pieces of the corners, set it up as a puzzle, and that will give us the 180 degrees based on the line that we just have from the circle that is 360 degrees. So the activity has, the students have a hands-on activities where they have to create a triangle, cut it and paste it on the paper, and they have to add all the angles of the three sides of the triangle that is going to equal to 180 degrees.
Perfect. So at the end of the lesson, the student should be able to find the angles
Right.
of the triangle.
The objective and the end of the lesson, the main goal is to know that they should know that all the angles should equal to 180 degrees when you add them up.
And will there be any technology or anything, or just the hands-on?
The technology will be implemented in the computer with a peer assessment where students are able to practice some questions within groups of two. And from there, I'm monitoring them if they're doing good or doing bad. And that way I could provide them an immediate feedback to them as well.
Perfect. And how will you know you have accomplished the lesson's purpose?
The only way I would know is also providing them an exit ticket throughout the class through peer assessment. And if I see a high percentage of the class that they did manage what they're supposed to learn throughout the day, then it means that we have mastered the content of the TEKS that was being taught on that day. But if there's something that the percent is not there, then there is something I have to reinforce and provide an additional support for the students as a reteach.
Excellent. And what are some things you want me to look at specifically that you would want any like extra feedback or for me to look for when you're doing your lesson?
Yes, since I have a large group of students, a mixture of different students like 504, SPEDS, LEBs, um, all of that, uh, some of the students they tend to be a little bit more, let's say, challenging to understand the concept. So I just want you to observe in that area if I have it in a correct setting within the classroom, because the way I set it up is having a student that is very knowledgeable in the math area with someone that needs an additional support, additional help, so that way when I put him in a group activity, they could help each other out.
Perfect. I'll for sure look for that. More moving on to more about the students. What is important for me to know about this class, like the demographics, the behaviors, how they're grouped?
Well, since it's a sixth grade and they have a lot of energy, these students, and that energy we need to disperse it in class activities, hands-on activities. So I usually have it in groups of two, so that way the students will interact with one another and provide feedback if they did it correctly or did it wrong as well. They have their group discussions and uh, they move forward together as getting it correct or getting it wrong. As the students are working together, I constantly walk around in the classroom. I'm checking for understanding and as well providing some students to remain on task. Because of course, sixth grade students, they want to be off task, so we have to put them back in and remain on task.
Of course. And in terms more of demographics, what do we have? How many EVs? How many 504s?
We have about six beds. We have about two 504s. We have four honors, and the rest are regular students.
In terms, since you do have a good mixture of students, how will you differentiate the instruction and the activities to meet the needs of all of them?
Usually, the definition on the instructions, we provide supplemental aids. We provide a calculator for additional support. We have also anchor charts and posters for them to look at. We provide visual. At times, we have to provide a student that could translate English to Spanish, and we have dictionaries as well provided. All of those supports and even further supports we have in class as well. It's helpful for them.
Excellent. When the students are struggling with the lesson, how will you determine the cause of it and how will you fix that and address their needs for them to complete it?
So if the students are struggling within the lesson, that is when I had to provide a timeout because we need to go back and start reviewing the main concepts of the introduction of why they're getting it wrong. Because if they're not understanding the main concept of the objective, then they don't know what's going on within between and towards the end of the lesson. So that is something we need to go back, address it maybe a little bit differently, so that way they could have a different sense of understanding. But overall, it should be addressed.
Perfect. And do you have any challenges that you anticipate with this lesson?
Yes, usually the challenges that I face is basically having the patience within the classroom. The students have a lot of energy. We just need to be patient and provide a warm climate to the students and continue moving forward and give them a positive feedbacks, positive attitude, and that's the only way they could be successful in the classroom.
Perfect. And anything inside the lesson that they might confuse, like in the with the triangles, is there something?
Usually, at this level, students find a lot of, well, there's a lot of misconceptions. They get confused at certain parts of the addition when it comes to decimal places. And especially when they're trying to find a missing angle, they tend to sometimes they need to go outside the box to figure out how to figure out that missing angle.
Mhm.
And some of the students are lacking of that. They don't have that connected level yet, but that's why we're introducing it so that way they could build it up from the ground and build them up.
Perfect. And moving on towards the assessment of the students, what are some formal or informal techniques that you will use to collect evidence of their knowledge and that they have mastered the skills?
Again, as a formal and informal, we use technology implemented as well for assessments. That's where we're monitoring all the skills that the students are putting in as well. Now, as a informal, I would say what I could do cold calls, use the TLAC strategies to figure out if the students actually are paying attention, they're engaged, and they know how to answer certain questions. I'm providing them wait time as well. Um, as a formal assessment, also that is also individually, and they're provided with a supplemental aids or monitoring them through the technology, and hopefully they'll be successful, or else we have to provide additional support.
Great. And is there a way for students to self-monitor their progress and basically take charge of their own learning?
Yes, like I said, in the technology, it has that powerful tool that students are willing to check if they got it correct or they got it wrong. If they get it wrong, then they have a second opportunity to double check if they got it right for now. And since we're humans, we all learn by mistakes, and the students needs to learn also that making mistakes it's okay within the classroom environment. I'm sorry, what was it again?
Okay. The question is, how do you plan to address inappropriate behavior should that become an issue during your instruction?
Usually, when there's behavior in a classroom, we're trying not to put the student in center of attention of everybody. Let's try not to scream at the student. Let's talk to them calmly. But first, uh, what I learned in the past trainings through PDs is best to, if you provide choices to the student. For example, you tell the student, okay, choice one, either you want to stay quiet, let others learn, and I don't have to relocate you from your seat, or second option would be I'll be relocating you, but you have to stay after class for additional intervention or consequences provided. If the student persists on disagreeing with this type of choices, then we follow what is the PBI's S guidelines, which is calling the parents, letting them know what's going on within the classroom environment, that you have a huge concern. And then from there, if it proceeds, then it starts moving on into a referral.
Right. Before we finish this, is there any way in the lesson that you incorporate students' backgrounds, their any cultural differences for the instruction?
The lesson it involves in a triangle.
Mhm.
So there's definitely you could implement a question related to a real world scenario
Mhm.
dealing with triangles. One of the examples could be possibly implementing like cutting wood. If you need a certain piece that is in the shape of a triangle, obviously you need to know certain angles in order to cut that little piece of wood in order to get the right size to fit it in somewhere within where you want to place it.
And before we finish, are there any particular issues in terms of the student, the curriculum, the instruction that you'd like me to be aware of before going in?
Yes, one of the issues is that, like I told you, sixth grade students, a lot of energy. Not everybody is gonna be, how do you call it, well behaved. They have so much energy, and I just want the observer to understand their age, and that some students they just wanna stand up, they wanna stand out from the classroom, they wanna speak up and everything. So it's like minor discipline, basically what I'm trying to say, that they need proper guidance in order for them to fully understand that there's consequences, concepts, and rules, procedures that they need to follow that they still haven't established within the classroom.
Perfect. Is there anything else you would like me to know before finishing off?
Um, no, that will be it, and hopefully you have fun watching my classroom.
Perfect. Thank you so much for this time, and I look forward to seeing the lesson.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Well, hello, Mr. Moreno. Thank you for taking the time to meet with me for your post-conference.
Yes, of course.
This meeting should take about 15 minutes, maybe a little more. The purpose of this conversation is for us to talk about what I observed in your class, the data I collected, the evidence, and to identify both your areas of strength and your areas that can use a little bit of improvement for your instructional practices. I would like to collaboratively work with you. That way we can review the data that I have right here and discuss how this feedback can inform your teaching, your practices. By the end of this, I hope we can come up with a action plan together that will reflect our agreements in making any adjustments or growth for your teaching and the learning of your students.
Sure.
Um, so before starting, I just want to say that I appreciate being given the opportunity to go observe your class and see your lesson on the triangle sum theorem. I love seeing the various strategies, the various techniques, methods that you use while also observing how you engage the students in your teaching and in your lesson. The students seemed very interested and very motivated to learn throughout the whole lesson, to do the activities, during the I do, the we do. Everything was very good in their attention. Um, what else? The students were interested, and I overall enjoyed witnessing your enjoyment to involve them in their learning. I paid lots of attention to several areas, uh, like the student behavior, which you mentioned in your pre-conference that you wanted me to look at.
Yes.
How you redirected off-task students, how you made any adjustments throughout the lesson, and overall how you monitored them throughout the whole event. I have provided you, and I will provide you with a copy of the feedback in writing, and includes feedback in all the areas of T-test, including like standards and alignment, data and assessments, the knowledge of students, and so on and so forth.
Yes.
But before moving forward, I'd love to hear your thoughts first. How do you think the lesson went?
I believe the lesson went well, but I know within the years I need to continue modifying the lesson because no matter how much you prepare for a lesson, there's always something missing within the class environment that you want that students to know and be successful throughout the day. So there's always areas of growth and improvements, and every time, every year, the STAR test, they keep implementing new technologies, new changes within the questions, and that is something that I, as a teacher, need to adapt within the next following years and continue modifying the lesson and making it better and better as the way we go.
Especially as the kids come in different levels and everything every year, and the different requirements, as you mentioned, from the state and everything. How do you think you did in terms of the goal of the day of the lesson?
I believe I did very well. Based on the data that I observed from the exit ticket, I got about 85% of students passed the exit ticket. There was a low percentage that needs a little bit of proper or more guidance. Probably gonna be doing a peer-to-peer interventions. Maybe I'll be bringing them in for tutorials or type of way. Um, but for sure, they're gonna be provided help so that we could learn, so we could fill in that learning gap.
Perfect. Yes. And were there any parts of the lesson you found to be the most successful? Like in certain areas that you think you did, oh, I did perfect in this, or very good?
You know, I think that one of the pieces of the lesson is where we do the part of we do, because I had the students set up in pairs of twos, and the part where I found successful is that whenever I say, okay, 1 minute, group red, talk to group blue, and the student in group red, they're explaining how the procedures uh, is to be done, following the steps, while group blue are listening. And then the next minute, I tell, okay, group blue, talk to red. And group blue is the ones revising to see if the procedures or the following steps did it correctly. Then uh, they give them a positive feedback. If not, they'll do the correction right there and then. And from there, we selected a random group by cold call. They participate on the board and they explain and elaborate everything to the classroom, and everybody agreed. And from there, everybody snapped. So I'm pretty sure that was the successful part of the within the classroom. and I also saw full engagement in the classroom.
Yes, I saw that too. It was great use of collaborative work between the students and just them being able to take charge of their own learning was great to see, especially in a classroom with sixth graders. Um, and what as we talked about that, what areas do you think were students experience difficulty in doing? And what part of your lesson specifically do you think they have issues that you maybe can improve a little more on?
Okay, there's certain, like I mentioned the other day, I have a mixture of different types of learning disabilities within the classroom. Some students are labs, bio4s, all of that. And that became a little bit of challenging because they're using strong vocabularies, and some of the students they still do not know how to do simple computations, and that is something that the students are having trouble with, especially the dyslexia students. It's very hard for them to read the numbers and the question, and that becomes very challenging to them. And especially as a teacher, we have to be patient, continue working with them slowly, and build them up little by little.
Yes, I definitely agree. Having a class with a mix of students and different needs can be very hard to meet all their needs individually. So I definitely see how that's a thing we can work on. Awesome. So it's great to hear what you thought of your lesson. It's always important to reflect on what you think you did well, what you did not so well. That way we can learn where we can improve on just to overall improve ourselves and our students. So let's move to the feedback that I gathered during your observation.
Sure.
For the standards and alignment, I did give you a 5 for the rating. The lesson was very well aligned to the state standards. Specifically, you focus on the triangle sum theorem. The planning include measurable goals, which you mentioned that I know on the board you wrote that it with at least 80% accuracy in your independent assignment, in their independent assignment, which you said they got 85%.
Right.
So that was excellent. You clearly stated the objective in the beginning of the class and you connected it to the prior knowledge, especially during the problem of the day in the beginning. So overall, very strong alignment with the TEKS and you had very clear learning objectives. So no issues in the standards and alignment, very, very good. Do you have any comments for that part or are we good?
No, we're good. We're good.
For the data and assessments, your planning involved both lots of formative and informal assessments to track the progress of all the students throughout the whole lesson, including through technology and through your use of labs. You utilized a problem of the day to assess the prior knowledge. You used questioning throughout the lesson to see where if they understood certain parts of the certain steps of the assignment of the lesson.
Yes.
You used the website Pear Deck to formally assess the students in their independent practice. As I mentioned, you did perform the labs where each lab asked students to show a certain step to solve a problem, and you used an exit ticket to gauge the understanding at the end of the lesson. So overall, very effective use of formative assessments to guide your overall instruction and the mastery of the students. So very, very good. I did give you a 5 on that also because you use multiple strategies, multiple methods of assessing the students. Any questions about that part?
No, everything good.
Everything good. Knowledge of students, you anticipated common misconceptions. You did mention in your pre-conference that such things like students thinking that the sum of the triangles could be different other than 180, and some other misconceptions that you may have mentioned, which I did notice you made the proper adjustments and you addressed those misconceptions whenever necessary. So you demonstrated a strong awareness of those things. And overall, the student understanding and knowledge was very, very good throughout the whole lesson. So very good job. Any questions about that part?
No.
The activities, the students were engaged in hands-on activities and through the measuring and the cutting of the circle, which you mentioned in your, also that you were going to do in your pre-conference. You allowed group discussions, you allowed them to work together and solve a problem, check each other, give each other feedback, which was excellent. So very, very good for the activities. Any questions on that dimension? No. The achieving expectations, you set high expectations by encouraging the students to explain their reasoning and justify their answers. How, like for example, how do you know it's 180? What did you do to get the 180? You encourage critical thinking, and you persisted the lesson until most of the students showed mastery, which is excellent. Um, you anticipated common mistakes, which we just mentioned earlier. Also, the independent practice allows students to take control of their own learning because they are able to look through their progress and check their work, self-check.
Yes.
So very good on the achieving expectation. The content knowledge and expertise, you provided clear expectation and multiple representations of the theorem using visual and hands-on approaches like your anchor charts and your we do and I do on the board for the students. Any questions about that part? Anything else you want to include?
The supplemental aids also.
The supplemental aids, yes. Very good. On the supplemental aids, they did have the necessary supplemental aids, and those of the students that needed the calculator had the calculator. Communication, students were able to work collaboratively to solve a problem. They discussed and justified their answers to each other. And you establish practices that provide opportunities to communicate with you and with their peers. Anything else you want to add to that part?
No.
No. For differentiation, you provided multiple ways of the students to show their learning and show their knowledge, which I mentioned earlier through the hands-on, through the supplemental aids, through the different ways of asking questions, and the different forms of showing the mastery, like the labs, the peer assessment, and different ways for overall for them to show their knowledge. And you also adjusted your lesson and monitored every student's progress through the use of technology, supports, and accommodations. Anything else you want to add to the differentiation?
No, not yet.
The monitor and adjust, you adjusted the pacing of the lesson based on the responses. So whenever you saw a common mistake happening, you stopped and you redirected the students, taught them again, make sure they understood why what they did was wrong, which is perfect. You adjusted the method to keep students engaged, and you consistently checked for understanding throughout the lesson. Any questions on that? No? And the last thing was on your learning environment. Your students knew the expectations when entering the classroom. They knew what to do during every part of the lesson. You had well-established routines and transitions. As soon as they entered, they knew what to do. They sat down, grabbed their notes, knew what to do, work on the problem of the day. You use positive reinforcement and redirection effectively, and many students remain engaged throughout the lesson. The part here I included, you could incorporate more accountability strategies to motivate students to stay engaged and participate. The classroom culture, a respectful and collaborative environment. They work together effectively, so very, very good. They felt comfortable talking to each other and the way they were grouped and everything. Anything you want to add for the learning environment?
As well, students are also aware that mistakes are welcome within the classroom, so that way they could create their own mistakes as well.
Yes. So they feel comfortable enough to do anything in the classroom that they need to do. So that was what I'm going to provide for you. Focusing more what I believe truly were your goals and what went really well, because I know I wrote a bunch of things on all this rubric, but there's some things that I just want to pinpoint that I know were very, very good. I noticed that you incorporated, I already mentioned it before, but the multiple representations of doing the problem, showing them how to do it, including like the visuals, the anchor charts, the hands-on learning, the activities. You even at times switched to the Spanish language to help those EB students, which really helped students visualize and comprehend the content overall. Yes, so especially those with different learning styles and needs, you help them a lot with these great strategies that you utilize in your classroom. You also use technology, which they were able to complete their assignment, and it was an excellent way of overall you were also assessing yourself and how you were doing. So you're overall providing the necessary supports, the aids to further develop their understanding, and you're providing a bunch of ways for them to learn. So that's an excellent one thing I saw very, very good with you. So I encourage you to continue doing this, and of course continue learning different ways to further develop this area, which excellent as of now, but like they always say, we can always move forward in growth.
Of course, my lessons, I'm always trying to maximize instruction throughout the whole time period of the class.
Yeah.
I really do not like any uh, time being wasted if the students are not working. Especially if the students are finished with the assignments, still provide them additional work on separate platforms, applications throughout the computer they could work on as well.
Excellent way to keep them working.
Of course, because we do have those honor students
Yes.
within the classroom.
Yes. Some other thing, your checking for the understanding was excellent. You made sure that you did not move on. Whenever students, you found them messing up on something, you always double checked with them, made sure that they were good before you moved on to the next step, which was a great thing. Your students were able to justify their thinking, and it allowed you to also identify any misconceptions that may have came up during the lesson. So,
Right.
very great use of your checking for understanding. And the last thing I really took notice was how you circulated the room with your labs. That was an excellent way of making sure that they understood every single step. So the labs were an excellent use where you told them, lab one, I'm going to look for this. You walked around, made sure every student got the first step done, and then you moved on to step two, lab two, and you walked around, made sure. This overall allows them to take it by step and make sure you are catching those students where they mess up. So very excellent use of the labs. Very proud of that.
Thank you.
Yes. So along with the areas of glows, you do have some areas of grows that,
Of course.
so of course, let's dig into the areas where there's room for growth.
Yes.
Overall, the lesson, of course, went very well, but there are a few areas we could refine.
Right.
One of those is the questioning. You did do questioning, excellent checking, but I feel like we can use higher order thinking questions to make the students think more critically. For example, when you ask like the students like, what is the sum of the angles in a triangle? You can use follow-up questions like, can anyone explain why this is true? Or how might these apply to a different triangle? Or some questions
Like
like
a
that.
discussion, debate
Yes.
type of way.
Yes, have them actually
Sure.
think like, why is this what it is? Why is this 180? What happens if I don't get 180?
Right.
Yeah.
Sure, I could apply that next time.
Yes, so this can encourage students to think more critically and overall develop their understand why they're getting the 180.
Yeah.
And yes,
For sure.
so that's one area. The other area is real world applications in the question. I know it can be difficult in math and with some lessons, but in terms with the triangles, we can definitely use things like construction, just anywhere we see triangles, we can definitely put it into our lessons. And another way we can also things we can apply is different subjects. Maybe we can bring in some science into it, some English, I don't know, some things we can figure out and research and see what we can input. So definitely would like to see what ways we can enhance your content knowledge and expertise by connecting it into the real world scenarios for the students. And so, yes, do you have any?
Yeah, last time I mentioned how we could implement this in the real world. But due to a lot of preparation, partly I put it to the side and I forgot to include those real world problems.
Yes.
But a good thing that you mentioned it, so that way next time I could modify the lesson. Like I told you, there's always
Yes.
modifications to be done to make it better. But for sure, next time it's going to be implemented more real world
Yes.
problems.
And of course, the questions that you used were very star aligned, so it was great. But of course, we can always use that extra real world application for
Yes,
the
of
students to
course.
truly understand it. Specifically in the pre-conference, you did say to me that you wanted me to look for the student behavior and the management. You consistently implemented your rules, your expectations, and you addressed any misbehavior promptly as soon as you saw students start talking or do something that they weren't supposed to be doing. The majority of the students did meet your expected classroom behavior standards. All students were engaged meaningfully throughout your whole lesson, but there were certain times that their interest and their directness was elsewhere.
Right.
And it happens, I know, we can't keep an eye on all the students and every single second of the lesson, but we need to find ways in which to prevent that a little more. I know maybe we can change the grouping. Maybe they don't do so well with certain groups. Maybe they talk a little more with someone during the time they shouldn't be talking. We can also encourage them like through different reward systems, like if you do something like to talk to them and encourage them to do the positive thing in the classroom. Do you have any other suggestions for that?
Oh yeah, that class it's like I mentioned, sixth grade. They have so much energy,
Mhm.
and they still have the energy from the elementary level that they just wanna move around, play around,
Yeah.
and be active in those areas instead of being a little bit more mature type of way. But overall, uh, yes, some students they still have that energy,
Yes, of course.
and I try to disperse that energy as much as I can. But some of them they still need to develop the procedures and routines
Mhm.
within the classroom. They need to control themselves a little by little. I have arranged different seating arrangements constantly. I have made some kind of phone calls as well to follow up with those students academically and behaviorally and
Mhm.
improvements within the classroom. But I sure need to implement also that the reward
Reward
system.
system, something
Maybe
to encourage them.
that should be encouraging to those students.
Yes, definitely. We can plan something that we can use as a way to see if it helps the students. Because I know you, like you mentioned, the parent phone calls and moving them around might not always be the best. So maybe just by talking to them and figuring something that maybe involve them a little in the action, in the plan.
Right,
That
right.
way we can see what they like, so we can kind of encourage them. Maybe it motivates them a little bit. This is what I like to do, so maybe they will actually listen to staying quiet.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yes.
I'll go ahead and try that.
Yes, and the last thing we need to talk about is the action steps and the next steps you're going to do based off of we just talked about and your growth. So let's take a few minutes now to set up an action plan based on what we discussed. This will give you basically a set of next steps to do. That way we can have somewhere to go and progress to. That way, but the next time I observe you, you have fixed these, or not fixed, you have refined these
Right.
areas because they're not bad. You have them good. It's just there's always areas for growth.
Of course, of course.
So, based on our discussion, what is one change you'd like to implement in your
Um, one change. Wow, that's a good
classroom? Or
question.
two, however, whatever you want to do.
I will say probably providing more notes, like paper notes to the students.
Mhm.
Those type of changes because I noticed that students take a good while writing down the notes from the board, and I feel like I could maximize my instructional time if the notes are already provided for them and they could just use a highlighter and highlight the main components, main ideas, and just write down the main key points within the lesson.
Mhm.
So that way they could have already the vocabulary words, the following the cubes method as well. All that in place to have them print out notes for them. I think it should be way better change
Yes, definitely.
that I need to implement.
Yes, and have them write them, do the problem there with you. That would be an excellent way of getting them more involved and more accountable for their learning.
Right.
And is there anything in terms of the things I've listed for your growth that you would want to focus on, like the questioning or the real world applications? Which
I think the real world applications
Mhm.
because sometimes we get carried away with just putting questions
yes, I know. Yes.
that involve steps, and we just carry away from reality that it could be implemented within the classroom as well.
Yes. Would how can I best support you in meeting these changes and helping you in implementing these?
Uh, if you're willing to have some additional resources,
Mhm.
please share it with me. I'll be glad to implement that in my classroom for the future.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to provide you with any links or websites or articles that I know of that can help you in implementing these things that you want to fix. I can also provide any professional developments for you and other teachers that are experiencing the same
Okay.
area that they want to improve. So definitely we'll keep you checked on that. That way we can get you what you need to
Awesome.
improve. So through these actions, I hope you can grow in your knowledge and apply it effectively in your classroom. That way we can see even more improvement, not just with you, but with the students, especially with their learning.
Sure, sure.
So this concludes our post-conference. To summarize, you did a great job. Great job in your lesson, great job in everything. So with a few tweaks, I think we can make it even more effective for the
Oh, yeah,
students.
of course.
So before we leave, you just want to say I will provide you with a copy of this, of your my observation with all the evidence and everything that I saw. Reflect back to it to record anything, your progress, how you see yourself improving after you do any of the professional developments, the articles, or any of the things I will help you provide you with. Do you have any other questions regarding any of the things we talked about?
No, I just really appreciate that you show up and also understanding the type of students that I have and also understanding the concept of the day, the objective, and as well providing amazing feedback with amazing suggestions that should be implemented to become a better teacher. I strongly appreciate it.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for your commitment to your students and to yourself, your knowledge, your learning. You're doing great work. I look forward to seeing you again and seeing another observation with all these changes as your lessons continue to grow and you
Yes.
continue to grow. I'm confident that you will do great. So let's schedule a follow-up conversation to discuss your progress and for any additional support that you may need. So
Yes,
thank you so much.
I look forward to see you.
Thank you.
Yes.